Power often feels invincible until it encounters the one thing it cannot control: a broken heart. You might think an alpha king is untouchable, seated high on a pedestal of strength and dominance. But what happens when the very bond meant to make him stronger becomes his undoing? This isn't a fairy tale. It is the story of a rejection so cruel it defied the laws of nature, and a woman whose sorrow didn't just break her own heart, it physically shattered the man who broke it. A single tear should be harmless, but for Declan Blackwood, it was the beginning of the end. The air inside the Blackwood estate smelled of money, expensive French perfume, and the faint, predatory musk of wolf shifters trying to pretend they were civilized. Serafina Hart adjusted the collar of her stiff white uniform. She wasn't here as a guest. She was here to hold a tray of crystal flutes filled with Dom Perignon, invisible to the elite members of the pack who swirled around her in gowns that cost more than her entire life's earnings. Sarah was 22, an Omega with no pedigree, no family name, and, until tonight, no mate. She was the girl who worked in the pack kitchens, the one who scrubbed the mud off the Alpha's Range Rovers. She was a ghost in her own home. "Keep the tray level, Hart," the event coordinator hissed, snapping her fingers near Sarah's ear. "Alpha Declan is making his entrance." The room went silent. The heavy oak doors swung open, and he walked in. Declan Blackwood, the Alpha King of the Pacific Northwest. He was terrifyingly beautiful. Standing 6'4", with shoulders that strained against his bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo, he radiated a power that made the hair on Sarah's arms stand up. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, dark gray and turbulent. Beside him, clutching his arm with manicured claws, was Isabel Calloway. Isabel was the daughter of a neighboring Alpha, a strategic match. She was tall, blonde, and looked at the room with the boredom of a queen surveying her subjects. Sarah lowered her head, trained to be submissive, but her wolf, usually dormant and quiet, suddenly slammed against her ribcage. "Mate." The word wasn't a whisper. It was a scream in her blood. Sarah gasped, the tray in her hand trembling. The champagne flutes clattered. The sound was small, but in the silence of the room, it echoed like a gunshot. Declan froze. He wasn't looking at the dignitaries. He wasn't looking at Isabel. His head snapped toward the corner where Sarah stood, hidden in the shadows of a marble pillar. Their eyes locked. For a second, the world dissolved. Sarah felt the tether, that ancient golden string of fate, snap into place between them. It was warm, intoxicating, and undeniable. She saw his pupils dilate. She saw his hand twitch, pulling away from Isabel's grip. He felt it too. He knew. "Declan?" Isabel whispered, her voice sharp. The Alpha King blinked, the storm in his eyes darkening. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. He saw the frayed hem of her uniform, the scuffed shoes, the smell of dish soap and anxiety clinging to her. He saw a liability. He saw weakness. The warmth in the air turned to ice. Declan walked toward her. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "He's coming for me," she thought, a foolish, naive hope blooming in her chest. "He's going to claim me." He stopped 2 feet away from her. The scent of him, rain, cedar, and power, was overwhelming. "What is your name?" His voice was a low rumble, devoid of emotion. "Serafina," she breathed. "Serafina Hart." Declan looked down at her, his jaw set in a hard line. He glanced back at the room, at the generals, the politicians, the wealthy investors. Then he looked at Isabel, who was watching with narrowed, venomous eyes. He made his choice. "Serafina Hart," Declan said, loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "I, Declan Blackwood, Alpha of the Blackwood Pack." Sarah smiled, tears of joy pricking her eyes. "Reject you." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Sarah's smile shattered. "What?" she whispered, the word breaking. "I reject you as my mate," Declan repeated, his voice colder, harder. I cannot have a weak link. I cannot have a servant as a queen. I choose Isabel Calloway. The pain hit Sarah like a physical blow. It felt as though a hand had reached into her chest and crushed her heart. It wasn't just emotional. It was the biological severing of a soul bond. She couldn't breathe. She looked at him, searching for regret, but found only a wall of stone. You can't, she choked out. It is done, he said, turning his back on her. Leave my sight. Sarah trembled. The humiliation was burning her skin, but the heartbreak was drowning her. A single hot tear rolled down her cheek. It felt heavy, like molten lead. As Declan walked away, reaching for Isabel's hand to seal his choice, the tear dripped off Sarah's chin. It didn't hit the floor. At the exact moment the tear fell, Declan stopped mid-stride. He gasped, his hand flying to his chest. "Declan?" Isabel asked, reaching for him. "Don't touch me!" he roared, shoving her away. The Alpha King fell to his knees. The tuxedo shirt over his heart began to smoke. A dark, spreading stain appeared on the white fabric. Not blood, but something black, like ink or rot. Sarah watched, horrified, tears now streaming freely. "Make it stop!" Declan screamed, a sound of agony that no Alpha should ever make. He clawed at his chest, ripping the shirt open. There, directly over his heart, the skin was blackening, the flesh bubbling as if acid were being poured onto it. The mark wasn't random. It was shaped like a tear. "Seize her!" Isabel shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Sarah. "She's a witch! She's attacking him!" Guards rushed forward, shifting into their wolf forms, snarling. Sarah backed away, her hands raised. "I didn't do anything! I didn't touch him!" Declan writhed on the floor, his eyes rolling back in his head. He looked at Sarah one last time, his gaze filled with confusion and agony. "Get her out!" Declan gasped, his voice a gargle of pain. "Get her out of my pack!" Sarah didn't wait for the guards to grab her. She turned and ran. She ran through the kitchen, out the service entrance, and into the dark, rainy woods of the Pacific Northwest. She ran until her lungs burned and her feet bled. She didn't know it then, but she hadn't just been rejected. The moon goddess, furious at the arrogance of a king who thought he knew better than fate, had granted Sarah a terrible weapon. Her sorrow was no longer just an emotion. It was a poison, and Declan Blackwood had just swallowed the whole vial. 3 weeks later. The Blackwood Pack Hospital was a state-of-the-art facility, usually reserved for birthing pups or treating battle wounds. Now, the entire East Wing was quarantined. Dr. Silas Thorne, the pack's beta and head physician, stripped off his latex gloves and threw them into the biohazard bin. He looked exhausted. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his lab coat was wrinkled. "Well?" Isabel demanded. She was pacing the hallway, her heels clicking on the linoleum like a ticking clock. She wasn't wearing hospital scrubs. She was wearing a silk blouse and a skirt that cost more than the MRI machine in the next room. "Is he better?" Silas sighed, rubbing his temples. "Isabel, keep your voice down." "Don't tell me what to do, Silas. I am the future Luna." "You aren't Luna yet," Silas snapped, his patience fraying. "Not until the mating ceremony is completed, and we can't complete the ceremony because the groom is currently rotting from the inside out." He gestured to the observation window. Inside the sterile room, Declan Blackwood lay on a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs and monitors. He looked like a shadow of the man he had been 3 weeks ago. His skin was grey, his cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. The black mark on his chest, the one that had appeared the night of the rejection, had spread. It now covered his entire left pectoral muscle and was creeping up his neck like a sentient vine of ivy. "The antibiotics aren't working," Silas explained, his voice lowering. "The silver treatments just burn him. We brought in a shaman from the Dakota Packs, and she threw up the moment she walked into the room. She said the aura around him tastes like ash." "It's that girl," Isabel hissed. "The kitchen rat, Serafina. She cursed him." "We've been over this," Silas said. "Sarah was an Omega. She had latent genes. She couldn't light a candle with magic, let alone curse an Alpha King. This is something else. Where is she? Isabel asked. Gone. The trackers lost her scent at the state line. It rained for 3 days straight after she ran, washed everything away. Inside the room, the monitors began to beep rapidly. Silas swore and rushed back in. Declan was thrashing, his body arching off the bed. "It burns!" Declan groaned, his voice raspy. "Silas, cut it out! Just cut it out!" Silas grabbed a syringe of morphine, though he knew it barely touched the pain. "Hold him down," he ordered the nurses. As the sedative flooded his system, Declan's eyes fluttered. He wasn't seeing the hospital room. In his delirium, he was back in the ballroom. He saw the white uniform. He saw the brown eyes filled with adoration, then shock, then devastation. And he felt it again. Every time the pain spiked, he felt a wave of crushing sadness. It wasn't his sadness. It was hers. "She's crying," Declan whispered, his head lolling to the side. "Who?" Silas asked, leaning close. "Isabel." "No," Declan rasped. "Her. She's crying again. Make her stop. Please make her stop crying." 500 miles away, in a dingy motel room on the outskirts of Reno, Nevada, Sarah sat on the edge of a sagging mattress. She was exhausted. She had been working double shifts at a truck stop diner under the name Alice, trying to scrape together enough cash to keep moving. She lived in fear of the Blackwood trackers. She knew how Declan operated. He didn't leave loose ends. She was eating a cold sandwich, staring at the muted TV in the corner. A tear leaked from her eye. She cried almost every night. The rejection was a fresh wound that refused to scab over. Every time she thought of him, thought of the bond snapping, the physical pain in her chest flared. She didn't know that 500 miles away, every tear she shed acted like sulfuric acid on Declan's skin. She wiped her face aggressively. "Stop it," she scolded herself. "He didn't want you. He wanted the blonde. He wanted the power." But the bond, though rejected, wasn't gone. It was just twisted. Sarah looked down at her hands. They were trembling. She had started to notice changes in herself, too. Since that night, she hadn't gotten sick. She felt stronger. Her hearing was sharper. It was as if the rejection had unlocked the wolf she had always been told was too weak to manifest. Her phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. Sarah froze. No one had this number. She had bought the burner phone with cash at a gas station. She stared at it for a long time. Finally, she picked it up and, not saying a word, "Serafina," a distorted voice said on the other end. It wasn't Declan. It sounded mechanical. "Don't hang up." "Who is this?" she whispered. "A friend. Or perhaps a mutual enemy of the king." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "I don't have friends. You do now. Listen to me carefully. The Blackwood Pack isn't just looking for you to kill you. They are looking for you because their king is dying, and you are the only one holding the cure." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Dying? Declan is dying?" "The rot," the voice said. "It's consuming him. And here is the twist, little Omega. Isabel and Silas know it. They are letting him rot just enough to weaken him so they can take the throne. But if he dies, the pack dissolves into chaos. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to run faster," the voice warned. "Silas has hired mercenaries, not wolves, humans. They don't track scent, they track digital footprints. And you just used your credit card to buy a bus ticket to Phoenix." Sarah dropped the phone as if it were hot. She had bought a ticket online 10 minutes ago. "Leave the motel, now. Go north, not south. Hide in the static." The line went dead. Sarah stood up, panic seizing her. She grabbed her duffel bag. She didn't know if Declan was truly dying or if this was a trap, but she couldn't risk it. She opened the motel door and stepped out into the dry desert night. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled into the parking lot, its headlights sweeping over her. Sarah didn't wait. She bolted towards the back fence, vaulted over it with a strength she shouldn't have possessed, and sprinted into the darkness. Back at the estate, Declan woke up screaming. The black mark on his chest pulsed, and for the first time a crack appeared in his skin, oozing a dark, tar-like substance. Silas watched from the doorway, his face unreadable. He pulled out his phone and sent a text message to an encrypted number. The subject is stronger than we thought. The king is fading fast. Initiate phase 2. Declan wasn't just sick. He was being harvested. And Sarah was the battery they needed to recharge him, or kill him for good. 2 years later, the basement of the warehouse in Detroit smelled of stale beer, unwashed bodies, and rust. It was an underground fight club for shifters, rogue territory. Here, pack law didn't exist. There were no alphas, no lunars, just the strong and the dead. In the center of the chain-link ring, a massive lichen was snarling, saliva dripping from his jowls. He was twice the size of the woman standing across from him. "Kill her!" the crowd roared, waving fists full of cash. Serafina Hart, now known simply as Ghost, didn't flinch. She had changed. The fragile girl who scrubbed floors was gone. In her place was a woman made of lean muscle and cold calculation. Her hair was cut short, a sharp bob that stayed out of her eyes. A scar ran through her left eyebrow, a souvenir from a knife fight in Chicago. She wore a sports bra and tactical pants. Her arms were wrapped in tape. The lichen lunged. Sarah didn't shift. She didn't need to. 2 years on the run had taught her that the wolf inside her wasn't an omega. It was something ancient, something that fed on pain. She sidestepped the lichen's claws with supernatural speed, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to slam him into the chain-link fence. The metal rattled violently. Before he could recover, she drove her elbow into his temple. He dropped like a stone. The crowd went silent, then erupted. Sarah stepped over the unconscious body, her face blank. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. Emotions were dangerous. Emotions were weapons. She had learned the hard way. If she felt sad, somewhere across the continent, Declan felt pain. If she felt rage, he felt burning. And she wanted him to suffer, but she didn't want him to die. Not yet. She needed him alive, because, ironically, as long as he was alive, the Blackwood pack was too distracted trying to save him to hunt her effectively. She climbed out of the ring and grabbed her hoodie. A man was waiting for her in the shadows. Jackson Ryder. He was a rogue alpha, a man who had left his pack because he refused to bow to corrupt politics. He was huge, tattooed, and the only person Sarah trusted. "You're getting sloppy," Jackson said, handing her a bottle of water. "I won in 30 seconds, Sarah replied, wiping sweat from her neck. "You hesitated before the final blow. You were thinking about him." Sarah stiffened. "I wasn't." "Your scent changes when you think of him," Jackson murmured, stepping closer. "It turns sour, like burnt sugar." He looked at her with eyes that held a hint of longing he tried to hide. "He's still haunting you, Sarah, even halfway across the country." "He rejected me, Jax. I'm just returning the favor." "Are you?" Jackson pulled a folded newspaper from his jacket pocket. "Look at this." Sarah hesitated, then took the paper. It was a national tabloid, the kind that reported on the wealthy elite. The headline read, "The Falling King, Blackwood Emperor seen for first time in months." The photo was grainy, taken with a long-range lens. It showed Declan sitting in a wheelchair on a balcony. He looked skeletal. His skin was grey, his eyes hollowed out. The once mighty alpha looked like a corpse propped up for a weekend. Standing behind him, hand on his shoulder, was Isabel. She looked radiant, healthy, and terrifyingly in control. Sarah felt a sharp pang in her chest. Not love, she had strangled that emotion long ago, but shock. He looked ruined. "He's dying, Sarah," Jackson said quietly. "Truly dying this time. The word on the street is that Silas is looking for a donor, someone with compatible blood to flush the toxins." "Good luck to him," Sarah scoffed, tossing the paper into a trash can. "Declan has a rare blood type, RH null, Golden blood. Jackson gave her a look. So do you. Sarah froze. The air in the warehouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. How do you know that? I saw your medical file from the clinic in Nebraska. Sarah, don't you get it? Why do you think Silas is spending millions on mercenaries? He doesn't want to kill you. He wants to drain you. Sarah's stomach turned. To cure Declan? No, Jackson said darkly. If Declan dies, the alpha power transfers to the next strongest male, or his mate. But Declan hasn't completed the mating bond with Isabel. If he dies now, the power vacuum destroys the pack. Silas and Isabel need to keep him alive just enough to extract the alpha essence, or they need you to break the curse so they can kill him properly and take the power for themselves. Sarah grabbed her duffel bag. We need to leave. Tonight. Way ahead of you, Jackson said. But there's a problem. The exits are blocked. Boom. The heavy metal doors of the warehouse blew inward with a deafening explosion. Smoke filled the air. Mercenaries in tactical gear swarmed in. They weren't using bullets. They were using tranquilizer darts loaded with wolfsbane. Go! Jackson roared, shifting into a massive, scarred, brown wolf. He launched himself at the first wave of attackers. Sarah ran towards the back exit, but 3 men dropped from the catwalks above, blocking her path. One of them wasn't wearing a mask. He was a tall, wiry man with a cruel smile. "Hello, Seraphina," Silas Thorne said, stepping through the smoke. He held a cane, but he didn't look like he needed it. "Or do you prefer ghost now?" "Silas," Sarah growled, her eyes flashing gold. "You look tired. Being a traitor must be exhausting." "It has its moments," Silas shrugged. "Come quietly, my dear. The king misses you terribly. He screams your name in his sleep. It's quite annoying, actually. I'd rather die." "I was afraid you'd say that." Silas raised a small remote and pressed a button. A high-pitched frequency screamed through the room. It was an ultrasonic emitter, tuned specifically to shift frequencies. Sarah screamed, clutching her head. It felt like her brain was liquefying. Her vision blurred. She saw Jackson go down, shot with 3 darts. "No!" she moaned, falling to her knees. Silas walked over to her, crouching down. He stroked her cheek with a gloved hand. "Don't worry," he whispered. "You aren't going to die. You're going to be the savior of the Blackwood Pack, whether you like it or not." The last thing Sarah saw was the boot of a mercenary swinging toward her face. Then, darkness. Sarah woke up to the smell of antiseptic and expensive lilies. Her head throbbed. She tried to move her hands, but they were bound. Not with rope, but with silver cuffs. The metal burned against her skin, keeping her wolf subdued, trapped beneath the surface like a drowning swimmer. She opened her eyes. She wasn't in a cell. She was in a bedroom. It was opulent, decorated in dark velvet and mahogany. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows. She recognized the view, the Seattle skyline in the distance. She was back at the Blackwood estate. Specifically, the Alpha's private quarters. "You're awake." The voice was brittle, like dry leaves stepping on gravel. Sarah turned her head. Declan was sitting in an armchair by the fire. If the photo in the newspaper had been bad, the reality was horrific. He was wearing a silk dressing gown that hung off his skeletal frame. His skin was translucent, the veins showing through like blue maps. But the worst part was the smell. Beneath the expensive cologne, he smelled of decay. He was looking at her with eyes that were sunken and rimmed with red. "Declan," she whispered. The name tasted like ash. "You came back," he said. His voice lacked the commanding boom it once had. It was a plea. "I didn't have a choice," Sarah spat, sitting up. The silver cuffs clinked against the headboard. "Your dog, Silas, dragged me here." "But—" Declan frowned, confusion clouding his gaze. "Silas said. He said you called. He said you wanted to come home." Sarah laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "He lied. Just like you lied when you said we were fated." Declan flinched. He brought a trembling hand to his chest. I didn't lie about the fate, Sarah. I rejected it. There is a difference. Look at you, she said, her voice shaking. She wanted to hate him. She did hate him. But seeing the strongest man she had ever known reduced to this, it was terrifying. You're a corpse, Declan. I know, he whispered. Every day. It burns. It feels like my heart is being eaten by ants. The only time it stops, he looked at her, his eyes glistening, is when I dream of you. And now you're here. And the pain, it's duller. He tried to stand up. His legs shook violently. He took one step towards the bed, then collapsed. Sarah instinctively jerked forward to catch him, but the chains held her back. Declan crawled. The Alpha King crawled, until he was sitting on the floor beside the bed. He rested his forehead against the mattress, near her hand. I made a mistake, he choked out. A mistake? Sarah pulled her hand away. You humiliated me. You broke the bond. You chose power over your soulmate. I was trying to save the pack, Declan yelled, his voice cracking. Isabel's father. He threatened war. We were weak, I thought. If I married her, I could secure the alliance and keep you as my... He stopped. He realized what he was about to say. Sarah went cold. Keep me as your what? Your mistress? Your secret? Declan didn't answer. The silence was an admission. You are pathetic, Sarah whispered. I am, Declan agreed. Tears began to stream down his face. Sarah watched, mesmerized. The Alpha King was crying. As his tears fell, Sarah felt a strange sensation. The bond, the shriveled, dead thing between them, twitched. Sarah, he wept. Please, just touch me. Just once, Silas says. He says if you forgive me, the rot will stop. Is that why I'm here? Sarah asked, looking around the room. For a forced forgiveness session. The door opened. Isabel walked in. She looked pristine in a white suit. Silas followed her, holding a medical tray. Oh, look at this, Isabel sneered, looking down at Declan huddled on the floor. The king at the feet of the servant. How poetic. Isabel, help me up, Declan growled, trying to regain some dignity. No, I don't think I will, Isabel said, walking over to the window. You see, Declan, the plan has changed. Silas set the tray down. It contained a syringe with a long, thick needle and empty blood bags. What is this? Declan asked, looking between them. Silas? The forgiveness cure is a myth, Declan, Silas said clinically, rolling up his sleeves. We tried to tell you that to give you hope. Hope keeps the heart pumping, and we need your heart pumping. Sarah isn't here to cure you, Isabel said, turning around, her eyes cold and predatory. She's here to replace you. Sarah yanked at her chains. What are you talking about? Golden blood, Silas explained, tapping the syringe. It's compatible with everyone. Universal. But in a wolf, it's a conductor for raw power. Silas looked at Sarah. We aren't going to put your blood in him, Sarah. We are going to put his blood in you. The room went silent. What? Sarah breathed. Transfusion of the alpha essence, Silas said. We drain Declan dry. We pump his alpha blood into your veins. Your golden blood adapts to it, absorbs the power. You become the alpha, a puppet alpha. And then, Isabel smiled, I use my authority as High Council representative to declare you mentally unstable due to the trauma of the rejection. I take guardianship of the pack. You stay in a padded cell, and I rule. You're insane, Declan rasped. The pack will never accept it. The pack will do what they are told, Silas said. He walked toward Declan. Now hold still, Your Majesty. This will hurt. Don't touch him, Sarah screamed. Silas kicked Declan in the ribs, flipping him onto his back. He pressed a boot onto Declan's throat. Start the line, Silas ordered the guards who had just entered. Two massive men grabbed Sarah's arms. No, Sarah fought, her muscles straining. Jackson! Jackson! Your rogue boyfriend is dead, Isabel said casually, checking her nails. Or he will be soon. We left him in the burning warehouse. Rage, pure, unadulterated rage, flooded Sarah's system. It wasn't the sorrow that had cursed Declan before. It was fury, The air in the room began to vibrate. The crystal water pitcher on the nightstand shattered. Declan, pinning under Silas's boot, looked at Sarah. His eyes widened. "Sarah," he wheezed. Sarah's eyes didn't just turn gold, they turned white. "Get away from him," she said. Her voice sounded layered, like three people speaking at once. Silas paused, looking up. "What did you say?" "I said," Sarah snarled, "get away from him." A shockwave of energy blasted outward from the bed. The silver chains holding her wrists didn't just break, they disintegrated. The guards holding her were thrown backward into the wall with a sickening crunch. Sarah stood up on the bed. She didn't look human. Her skin was glowing with a faint, ethereal light. The curse wasn't just poison to Declan. It was magic, and for the first time she wasn't using it to hurt him. She was using it to protect what was hers, not because she loved him, but because she would be the one to decide his fate. Not Silas. Not Isabel. She looked at Silas, who was backing away, terror dawning on his face. "You wanted a monster." Sarah stepped off the bed, the floorboards cracking beneath her bare feet. "Congratulations, you found one." The silence in the room following the explosion of energy was deafening. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the vacuum left after a bomb goes off. Silas Thorne was thrown against the mahogany dresser, his glasses shattered, a trickle of blood running from his ear. He looked at Seraphina, not with the clinical detachment of a doctor, but with the primal fear of prey, spotting a predator. The guards were unconscious, slumped like broken dolls against the wall. Sarah stood in the center of the room, her chest heaving. The white glow in her eyes faded back to a natural warm brown, but the air around her still crackled with static electricity. The sheer exhaustion of the outburst hit her knees, but she refused to fall. "You," Silas coughed, struggling to sit up. "What are you?" Sarah didn't answer him. She turned her gaze to Isabel. The blonde heiress was trembling, pressing her back against the window glass as if she could phase through it. Her arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the terrified realization that her political maneuvering meant nothing against raw, ancient power. "Stay back," Isabel squeaked, holding up a manicured hand. "My father has an army. If you touch me—" "Get out," Sarah said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. "What?" Isabel blinked. "Run," Sarah commanded, stepping forward. "Run and tell your father that the Blackwood Pack is no longer under new management. Tell him the king isn't dead yet." Isabel didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled toward the door, stepping over Silas's legs, and fled into the hallway, her heels clattering frantically on the hardwood. Sarah turned to Silas. The beta shrunk back, reaching for the syringe on the floor, a futile attempt to weaponize the situation. Sarah flicked her wrist. Without touching him, an invisible force slammed Silas's hand into the floorboards. He screamed as the wood splintered around his fingers. "That," Sarah hissed, leaning over him, "was for Jackson." She turned her back on him, dismissing him as a threat. Her focus shifted to the man on the floor. Declan was conscious, but barely. The shock wave had knocked the wind out of him, but his eyes were fixed on her with a mixture of awe and devastation. He looked at her as if he were seeing the sun for the first time after years of darkness. "Sarah," he wheezed, blood bubbling at the corner of his lips. Sarah dropped to her knees beside him. The anger was still there, a hot coal in her stomach, but seeing the black veins pulsating on his neck, watching the way his chest hitched with every shallow breath, the instinct to save kicked in. "Can you stand?" she asked, her voice clipped. I don't know," Declan gritted out. "Try. We can't stay here. Silas has backup. They'll be here in minutes." She grabbed his arm, the one not covered in the necrotic rot, and hauled him up. Declan groaned, a sound of pure agony as his weight shifted. He was heavy, despite his emaciated frame, his bones dense with alpha density. He leaned heavily on her, his head dropping to her shoulder. The scent of him, once cedar and rain, was now sour with sickness. But underneath it, She could still smell him. The scent that used to make her knees weak in the pack kitchen. "Why?" he whispered into her hair as they stumbled toward the door. "Why save me?" "Shut up, Declan," she muttered, kicking the door open. "Save your breath for walking." They moved into the hallway. The estate was strangely quiet. The explosion in the bedroom must have been contained, or the staff had already fled, sensing the shift in power. "The service elevator," Declan guided her, his voice faint. "End of the hall. Takes us to the garage." Sarah dragged him down the corridor. Every step was a battle. Declan's legs were failing him. Twice he stumbled, nearly taking them both down, and twice Sarah caught him, her new strength surging to support his weight. They reached the elevator. Sarah punched the button with a bloodied knuckle. The doors slid open, and they collapsed inside. As the car descended, Declan slid down the wall to the floor, his breathing turning ragged. "Sarah," he said, reaching out to grab the hem of her tactical pants. "If I don't make it to the car—" "You're making it," she snapped, checking the pulse in his neck. It was erratic, thready. "Listen to me," he insisted, his eyes finding hers. "There is a safe in the glove box of the black SUV, the G-Wagon. The combination is your birthday." Sarah froze. The elevator dinged, opening into the cavernous, concrete garage. "My birthday?" she asked softly. "I never forgot," Declan whispered, his eyes closing. "I never forgot anything." Sarah grit her teeth. She didn't have time to unpack the emotional baggage of that statement. She hauled him up again. "Move, Blackwood!" They burst into the garage. Rows of luxury cars sat gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Sarah spotted the matte black Mercedes G-Wagon in the corner. She dragged Declan toward it, opened the passenger door, and shoved him inside. He slumped against the leather, unconscious. Sarah ran to the driver's side. The keys were in the visor. Pack protocol for emergency vehicles. She cranked the engine. The V8 roared to life, echoing off the concrete walls. As she threw the gear shift into reverse, the elevator doors at the far end of the garage pinged open. 5 men in tactical gear poured out, rifles raised. "Stop the vehicle!" one of them shouted. Sarah slammed her foot on the gas. The heavy SUV shot backward, tires squealing. Bullets pinged off the armored chassis. Thank God for alpha paranoia, Sarah thought. The glass was bulletproof. She spun the wheel, shifting into drive, and gunned it toward the exit ramp. The metal gate was coming down. Silas had triggered the lockdown. "Hold on," she warned the unconscious Declan. Sarah floored it. The G-Wagon hit the descending gate at 60 miles per hour. Metal screamed, sparks flew, and the gate buckled, flying off its tracks. The SUV fishtailed onto the wet asphalt of the driveway, rain lashing against the windshield. Sarah didn't look back at the estate, the place that had been her prison, her home, and her hell. She turned onto the main road, heading toward the dark cover of the Olympic National Forest. Beside her, the Alpha King let out a low, pained moan. The black rot on his chest was glowing faintly, pulsing in time with the windshield wipers. "Don't die on me now," Sarah whispered, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. "I'm not done with you." The safe house was less of a house and more of a fortress, disguised as a log cabin. Nestled deep in the jagged peaks of the Cascades, it was invisible from the road and off the grid. No GPS signal, no cell service. Just snow, pine trees, and silence. Sarah kicked the front door shut against the howling wind. She had managed to carry Declan inside, laying him on the dusty bearskin rug in front of the stone fireplace. The cabin was freezing. She quickly gathered kindling and struck a match, getting a fire roaring. The orange light cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. She turned back to Declan. He was shivering violently, his teeth chattering. The rot had spread. It was no longer just on his chest and neck. The black veins were creeping down his left arm, reaching his fingers. The smell of decay filled the small room. Sarah stripped off her wet jacket and knelt beside him. She placed a hand on his forehead. He was burning up with a fever, yet his skin felt clammy. "Declan!" she called out, tapping his cheek. "Declan, wake up!" His eyes fluttered open. They were hazy, unfocused. "Isabel," he mumbled. Sarah stiffened. "No, it's Sarah." Clarity returned to his gaze for a second. "Sarah," he breathed. Then a convulsion seized him. He arched his back, a guttural scream tearing from his throat. "It hurts!" he screamed. "It's eating me!" Sarah pinned his shoulders down. "What do I do? Tell me what to do." "Kill me," he begged, tears leaking from his eyes. "Sarah, please, it's the only way to stop the pain. Use the silver knife in the kitchen. End it." "I am not killing you," Sarah yelled, her voice breaking. "I didn't survive 2 years of hell just to murder you in a cabin." "There is no cure," Declan sobbed. "I broke the bond. I defied the moon goddess. This is my penance." "Penance is for the living," Sarah argued. She looked at the black mark. It pulsed like a second heart, ugly and parasitic. She remembered Silas's words. Golden blood, a conductor for power. And she remembered the old legends, the ones her grandmother used to tell her before she died. The blood of the mate is the only thing that can soothe a rejected soul. They weren't mates anymore. Declan had severed that tie. But biology didn't forget. Her blood was still the key that fit his lock. Sarah stood up and ran to the small kitchenette. She found a paring knife. She didn't grab the silver one he asked for. She grabbed a steel one. She returned to the fire. "Drink," she commanded. Declan looked at her, confused. "What?" Sarah didn't hesitate. She sliced the palm of her hand. A line of crimson welled up, bright, rich, and smelling of copper and ozone. Her blood. She pressed her bleeding palm against his mouth. "Drink it, Declan." "No." He turned his head away, his jaw clenched. I won't turn you into a feeding bag. I won't be Silas." "You aren't taking it," Sarah said, her voice softer now. "I'm giving it. There's a difference." She cupped his jaw, forcing him to look at her. "Trust me." "None." Declan looked at the blood. The scent of it hit him, and his wolf, starved, dying and broken, snapped to the surface. His eyes turned pitch black. With a low growl, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her hand to his lips. He drank. The moment her blood touched his tongue, a shock wave went through the room. The fire in the hearth flared up, the flames turning blue. Sarah gasped. It felt like a hook had snagged behind her navel. It wasn't pain. It was a sudden, violent reconnection. As Declan swallowed, the black veins on his neck began to recede. The rot hissed, steam rising from his chest as if water were being poured on a hot pan. The color rushed back into his cheeks, but as the physical healing began, the mental barriers came crashing down. The vision. Sarah wasn't just in the cabin anymore. She was pulled into his mind. She saw the ballroom, the night of the rejection, but she was seeing it through his eyes. She felt his heart hammering against his ribs. She felt the overwhelming, blinding love the moment he saw her. "Mate," his wolf had howled. "Mine!" Then she saw the memory shift. She saw what happened before he walked into the ballroom. She saw Declan in his office. A man was standing there, a powerful warlock from the east, and he was holding a photograph of Sarah working in the garden. "The prophecy is clear, Alpha Blackwood," the warlock said. "If you claim her, she dies. The curse on your bloodline dictates that your true mate will be hunted by the Shadow Council. They will skin her alive to get to you." "I can protect her," Declan had argued. "No," the warlock said. "You can't. The only way to save her life is to reject her. Break the bond so completely that her scent is removed from your lineage. Marry the Calloway girl. She is strong enough to survive the crossfire. The Omega is not." Sarah watched as Declan broke down in his office. She felt his agony. He had made a choice. He chose to break his own heart, to ensure she kept beating. He chose to be the villain so she could live. "He didn't reject me because I was weak," Sarah realized, the vision swirling around her. "He rejected me because he thought I would die if he loved me." The vision ended. Sarah was thrown back into her body. She gasped for air. pulling her hand away. Declan was lying on the rug, his chest heaving. The black mark was gone. In its place was a faint, silvery scar shaped like a tear. He looked up at her, his eyes clear for the first time in years. The grey storm clouds were calm. He wiped the blood from his mouth. He knew what she had seen. The blood bond shared truth as well as life. "You idiot," Sarah whispered, tears pricking her eyes. Declan sat up slowly. He looked at his hands, then at her. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You listened to a warlock over your own heart," Sarah demanded, though her voice lacked the venom it had before. "I couldn't risk you," Declan said, his voice rough. "Sarah, I would rather you hate me and live than love me and die." "Well, congratulations," Sarah said, wiping her bleeding hand on her pants. "I hate you, and we're both almost dead anyway." Declan let out a dry, humorless laugh. He reached out, his fingers hovering inches from her knee, afraid to touch her. "Did it work? Am I healed?" Sarah looked at him. The physical rot was gone, but the bond, the golden string, was still frayed. It was dangling between them, waiting to be tied or cut forever. "Your body is healed," Sarah said, standing up and walking to the window to check the perimeter. "But we have a bigger problem." "Silas?" "No," Sarah said, looking out at the snowstorm. "That warlock you saw, the one who told you to reject me." "Yes, Malachi. He disappeared years ago." "He didn't disappear," Sarah said, turning back to him. "I saw him in Detroit. He works for Silas. The prophecy was a lie, Declan. It was a setup." Declan's face went pale. "They wanted you to reject me," Sarah continued, the pieces falling into place. "Because when an alpha rejects his true mate, his power becomes unstable, transferable. They didn't want to kill you. They wanted to break you so they could harvest your alpha essence." Declan stood up. His legs were steady now. The rage that filled his eyes was terrifying. It wasn't the rage of a sick man. It was the rage of a king who realized his sacrifice had been a trick. "They stole 2 years of our lives," Declan growled, his voice dropping an octave as his wolf surfaced. "They made me hurt you for nothing." "They made us both monsters," Sarah corrected him. She held up her hand, sparks of white energy dancing between her fingers. "But now, they're going to find out what happens when monsters work together." Declan walked over to her. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. "I will earn this back," he vowed, looking at the scar on her palm. "I will burn the world down to fix what I did to you." Sarah looked up at him. The hate was fading, replaced by a cold, sharp determination. "Don't burn the world, Declan," she said. "Just burn Silas." The grand hall of the Blackwood estate was draped in banners of gold and black. The pack had gathered for what they were told was a memorial for their late king and the coronation of Regent Isabel. Silas stood at the podium, a false mask of mourning on his face. "Declan Blackwood has fallen to his illness," he announced, his voice booming. "But the pack must survive. Isabel Calloway will lead us." "Liar!" The word cut through the silence like a whip. The heavy oak doors groaned and blasted inward, splinters raining down on the dignitaries. Through the dust, 2 figures emerged. Declan walked in first. He was no longer the skeletal invalid. He was a wall of muscle, his eyes glowing with restored alpha dominance. Beside him walked Sarah. She didn't walk behind him. She walked in stride, her hands wreathed in crackling white energy. "He's alive!" someone gasped. Silas froze, his face draining of color. "Guards! Kill them! They are imposters!" The guards hesitated. They looked at Silas, then at the pulsating aura of raw power radiating from Declan. Instinct overrode orders. One by one, the wolves dropped to their knees, baring their necks in submission to their true king. "No!" Isabel shrieked, backing away from the throne. "This is my pack now!" Sarah stepped forward. She didn't yell. She simply raised her hand. The white light shot out, wrapping around Silas and Isabel like a lasso, binding them together. "Ah, the prophecy was a lie, Silas," Sarah said, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "You tried to break the king, to steal his crown. Instead, you just forged a queen." Declan ascended the dais. He didn't look at the throne. He looked at the pack. "The old ways are dead," Declan roared. "There will be no more false prophecies. No more weak leaders hiding behind lies." He turned to Sarah, extending his hand. "And I will not rule alone." Sarah looked at his hand. The scar on her palm tingled. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The pain of the past 2 years was still there, a ghost between them. But as she took his hand, she felt the bond snap back into place, stronger, darker, and unbreakable. She squeezed his hand. "Make them beg, Declan." The Alpha King smiled, a dangerous, wolfish grin. "As you wish, my queen." And that is the end of Seraphina and Declan's journey. From a rejected servant to a queen who commands the very magic that tried to destroy her, it's a reminder that sometimes the things that break us are actually carving us into something stronger. Declan had to lose everything to realize that power means nothing without the person who holds your soul. Now, I have a question for you. If you were Sarah, would you have forgiven Declan after finding out he only rejected her to save her life? Or is the betrayal too deep, prophecy or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, magic, and second chances, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new romance drama. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.